But now we're at a stage where I'm playing the game and I'm enjoying it. And I'm having more fun with Stormgate right now than with any other RTS I've ever played in my life, other than basically the Blizzard RTS. So we're already at that level now, and we don't have a third faction yet. There's a ton of stuff missing from the tech tree. There's a lot of polish missing. I mean, balance is a whole different thing. So the fact that the fun is there now gets me excited.
Hey, SE Historian here. This video is one of the ones that I truly can't believe that I produced. For those of you who are a little newer to the StarCraft scene, you may only know Dario as the manager of the Shopify Rebellion. To me though, TLO is one of those legendary names in the world of StarCraft. His creativity may have reached meme status over the years, but Dario truly does possess one of the most unique and innovative minds that has ever touched StarCraft. He was one of those early foreign hopes taking games and even series off of Koreans at a time when few others were. One of the original boys in blue, as we refer to Team Liquid StarCraft squad back in the day. This video is just a special one, folks. If you're enjoying what I do here, be sure to get subscribed so you don't miss out on the laundry list of legendary names I have to come. If you really love what I'm doing, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find the link in the video description. That said, let's jump in to my word with TLO.
Okay, so TLO, thank you so much for taking the time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Nice to do this.
For sure. So, I think the customary question I've got into asking folks is, how did you first get into StarCraft?
I got into StarCraft through basically my brothers and my uncle, way back when I was, basically when the game came out. We used to play even Warcraft 1, Orcs vs. Humans, at home. So I think the first time I played multiplayer Warcraft 1, I was like 5 or 6 years old. We were lucky to have 2 PCs very early on and a network card. People don't even know what a network card is anymore.
Yeah.
But so we had our two PCs networked, and we played a lot of RTS when I was a kid, just at home. But then the first time I got internet, we got internet pretty late. In 2002, I was 12. And I thought I was like really good because I was beating my brothers and friends and stuff. And then I played Battle.net for the first time and I was like, oh my God, I'm so bad at this game. And then I was just like really hooked. Always loved competing. And I went to my first convention that was back then Gamescom was in Leipzig, not in Cologne. And I went to the WCG Germany qualifiers, and that's when the first time I saw StarCraft being played on a stage, and they had show matches with programmers, and I was actually lucky as a kid I got to play against Nazgul. So that's the first time I met Victor when I was like really young, which is funny because then 8 years later I met him in StarCraft II, telling him the story, and that's how we became practice partners, and eventually how I joined Team Liquid is because that connection happened like 8 years before.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's like sometimes tiny interaction that you don't necessarily think much of ends up having this, like a life trajectory altering impact. Yeah. So, was there a particular moment when you realized StarCraft was going to be like a really significant force in your life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Basically, ever since Gamescom, my dream was to become a programmer. And then when I kind of worked myself up from being like a real amateur player. It was kind of cool back then in Brood War. You had a really nice structure where you had like a 4th division and a 3rd division and like clan leagues and stuff like this. And I kind of worked my way up from being like this like total amateur to like being a pro-am, and then eventually in Brood War being good enough that I could play against people that would compete internationally, but not do that well. But I was kind of like starting to be in that sphere. And then when StarCraft II was announced, I saw that kind of as my moment. I'm going to practice a ton of Brood War in preparation for StarCraft II because I want to try to take it as seriously as I can.
That makes a lot of sense. It's so interesting that you just went to this event, obviously maybe not necessarily thinking much. And did you go there for StarCraft specifically? Like the Gamescom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how did your family initially feel about you like dedicating yourself so much to a game?
Well, I think for my parents it was not super unusual because it started for us so early that we spend a lot of time playing games and multiplayer, and they could see it's like there's a social element to it. I'm like, we're not just doing it by ourselves, we're doing it together. So it wasn't particularly shocking to my parents. I think the biggest shock was when I was invited to GSL, or like invited to go to Korea to stay with OGS, because GSL being open to foreigners was a very last minute addition to the first version of GSL. So in the span of a couple of weeks, it was open. So I think it was like, basically I had the conversation with Victor and one of our sponsors, and he said, hey, do you want to go to Korea in 2 weeks? And then I had to tell my parents I'm going to Korea in 2 weeks to basically live there. So that that was a little crazy. My mom was a little bit surprised by that, but in the end they understood.
How long did you end up spending on that initial visit?
So my first time in Korea was not the longest stint. It was like 2-3 months. And then I came back a little bit again for like another half year. But I had a lot of like health issues the first time I went. I was pretty unlucky when I was playing GSL. I was very quickly like one of the top ranked ladder players, and I was doing really well in like in-house practice, and I won my first round against Lucera. And then I got really sick for my second round of GSL against Hyperdub, who I had like a very high win rate against in practice. But then I got chickenpox. I never had chickenpox in my life before, and as an adult, chickenpox is actually quite dangerous.
Yeah.
So I was like completely knocked out for like weeks, like the 10 days before my match. When I played my GSL match, I was like covered in like just welts. And they put so much makeup on me to like kind of make it not look like I'm super sick, but I was very sick still.
That's insane. I think I'm not aware of that anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, is that something you've talked about publicly?
Yeah.
I guess it's been so long.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. So I don't know, what was it like for you, like being in Korea in those early days? You know, the industry sort of not fledgling because of their history, but for StarCraft II.
It was super exciting. I loved my time in Korea, other than the living situation was difficult because the old school hardcore team houses, where I lived with 15 other pros in a 2-bedroom apartment, was like pretty, it wasn't easy, especially doing it together with only like 1 or 2 other non-Koreans. People barely spoke English, and yeah, like staying in a room with 4 bunk beds. You don't have like any private space. You're expected to just like wake up, practice all day. And everybody's on a different sleep schedule, so I don't have the easiest time sleeping when there's a lot of noise, or people would like slam the door or just turn on the light at like 3 a.m. because they're going like, so I was a little bit upset and uncomfortable with that, and that probably contributed also further than, imagine me being sick in that situation on top of that. So I decided I need to like go home for now, and then I came back. And we basically just started renting our own apartment. So I lived with Huck, Jinro, Supernova, and Hero. And I liked my time in Korea more when we were in our own apartment.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Like, that always seemed, like, I think the idea of a team house was a bit romanticized.
Yeah.
At least in the foreign community. But it sounds awful.
It was pretty awful in some ways, yeah. It was like fun in some, but it definitely came with pretty large downsides.
Yeah. So, you know, so OGS was one of the Federation teams, yeah? And were you aware, like, you know, did people like talk a lot about the issues that were going on between Blizzard and Kespa?
So OGS was actually not part of Kespa. So yeah, I mean, everybody knew, and it's unfortunate because it definitely stunted StarCraft II massively in Korea. Really unfortunate.
And you know, another thing that came to my mind is like, maybe a little bit divisive or touchy. Like, I know you talked a little bit about some like weird treatment from some people in the team house.
Oh yeah, I did mention that. It's one of those things where like it took me actually many years to realize like how it was a little bit how messed up it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure it's a situation that happened to many people in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
Like a lot of young people together, like no oversight whatsoever. Yeah. So yeah, there was weird situations where basically one of the coaches would just like he come home very, very drunk, and we would like climb into my bed and like try to like cozy up with me in a way that was like very uncomfortable. And I like had to kick him out. Like nothing like too crazy happened, but still like you're in this completely foreign culture. Like basically this authority figure of the Korean team is doing something like that. It's surely had an effect on me, more so than I probably realized then when I was 20, because I'm, you're a 20-year-old guy, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And it was pretty creepy.
Yeah, I think especially if you're straight, like a male intimacy, you're not going to view it necessarily maybe as like incredibly sexual.
Yeah.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Also, like that is very crazy. Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Like you said, like nothing too crazy. Like that in and of itself sounds insane.
And it happened on several occasions, and I brought it up at some point, and they were kind of like making fun of me, like. So yeah, that wasn't cool.
That's gross. I'm glad that you were able to deal with that over time, and I think it's so important for people to be open about stuff like that, and I feel like it stops it from happening more.
Yeah, no, it's and it really it's like one of those things where people started talking about stuff like this, made me realize like years later, oh yeah, that was actually really across a boundary on a level that was not okay. So it is good people talk about, because it makes you, I think in the past a lot of people wouldn't even, they would just internalize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shifting gears a little bit, is there a specific moment or match from like your career that you like are most proud of?
I would definitely say my first GSL match. I'm very proud of, very fondly think about it, because like I basically created this like really interesting build order of being able to play Hellions against Roaches, which shouldn't have been possible, but I realized back then Roaches only had 3 range, Hellions already had 5th, extended to like 6 with like the splash. And I was like kiting Roaches. I made this really weird like Hellion only build with like 4 factories, then into Mass Thor. And it was just like this beautiful, beautiful StarCraft where like I broke the rules and it worked. And other than that, I'm most proud of my IEM Sao Paulo run. I got top 4 at IEM Sao Paulo. It was like amazing. The Brazilian crowd was like really, really good. And I remember my matches against Bomber. I played like just some of the best CVT I've ever had in my life. And I went into the tournament expecting very little. It wasn't like the best, period of time for me competitively. So I kind of went in there thinking I'm just gonna more or less take a vacation and relax and be nice to myself, go swimming, have some time in the sun. And then suddenly I played some of my best StarCraft, which definitely taught me, okay, like sometimes you need to let go of the tension.
For sure. How long had you been Zerg at that point?
Like good 3 years.
Oh, okay. So this is like pretty deep in the beginning there. Okay, makes sense. So, how did you first end up getting connected with Shopify?
So the kind of origin of it was when Select tweeted about like the internship, and Toby, the founder and CEO of Shopify, like reached out to him, basically mentioned, hey, you are a StarCraft, pro, then has to mean something in terms of you being able to achieve stuff. So like, we're definitely happy to extend an internship to you. And from there, I think I kind of interacted online a little bit. We started having a bit of a connection there. And over time, one thing led to another. I met my current like direct boss, Jeremy Steves, at Homesor Cup in the crazy one that happened in Tropical Island, the really awesome 20th one. We had conversations there. Shopify decided to double the price before that tournament. And so more conversations happened there. And then during COVID, Shopify basically finally decided, hey, let's do something with esports. They were interested to getting involved in gaming for a long time. Obviously, a lot of overlap between, first of all, internally, a lot of people really liked esports and StarCraft, but also as, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in esports and gaming, so it makes sense to connect with that community. COVID was kind of seen as a perfect entry point. It makes a lot of sense. A lot of things will halt, but gaming will continue. So basically during that time, I hit them up again and said hey, I know you guys were interested. Do you want to actually seriously talk about this? And then, yeah, I was at the right time at the right place.
Yeah, so it seems. What exactly is your role with Shopify?
So it's hard to define because we all wear so many different hats. So I basically co-founded the team together, as I said, with Jeremy. And at the beginning, it was like doing everything. It was like kind of like a startup. It is still like very much a startup culture within a large company. So at the beginning, I was literally the person who was like running the social media account with Jeremy,
Oh,
and like
that's crazy.
talking to, picking up our first players and like creating the branding with like a creative agency, like what is actually the name and what is the logo, and everything that needs to happen to create a team. The two of us did together, and then now over time, we have a few more managers, we have like coaches, our team is like slowly growing with like contractors, but overall we still only right now have 4 full-time Shopify employees. So it's still very much, everybody has to chip in everywhere. But my main day-to-day is I do a lot of the operations for the team, making sure all the teams have everything they need to have, be where they need to be, and interface with the leagues to make sure we're like in compliance and like they're provided with the information they need to actually run all the different tournaments. And then I also am involved in building teams, picking up players, having the difficult conversations as well, like when players are exiting Rebellion. And it's just like the bigger picture of where we want to take the team are happening, the general direction, interfacing with the main company. Right now, for instance, we picked up an LCS team, so for the first time, we having direct employees as players, which was like a definitely new experience trying to find out how we make that happen with like a large company like Shopify, having suddenly esports players as employees, not just contractors. So yeah, lots of interesting things to figure out. I feel like every month there's like different tasks to learn, but it's been very rewarding being able to grow with the role and learning more about basically having a real job in a way.
For sure.
Yeah,
it makes sense. Obviously, being a pro gamer is so disconnected from a typical, like work experience.
Yeah. So and that's been cool. And I travel a lot with the team and try to, basically share my experience as a competitor with the players. Especially we have a lot of younger players these days.
So I find it so interesting that. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of doom and gloom in StarCraft, and I think now maybe that's starting to a bit more positivity, yeah. But, Shopify entered into esports through StarCraft and ended up ballooning into a lot of other things. Yeah. Obviously, the Rebellion has grown a lot. Was it something about like the success of the StarCraft endeavor that inspired that growth into other genres and games? Or was that sort of like the initial plan?
It was always the initial plan to grow beyond StarCraft. StarCraft was like a very easy and natural entry point for us. I know the game very well. There was a lot of internal passion for it, and operating StarCraft is also a lot easier than picking up like a higher budget like esport like Counter-Strike or something. So StarCraft was kind of seen as like a very easy experiment to begin with. But also a very, very fun game to be involved with. So there's a lot of love for the game, but also it made a sense to kind of start at this like little bit smaller scale as a proof of concept to then be able to justify growing at the scope that we have.
Yeah, that's something I was very curious about, because like I just thought like, okay, perhaps like the success of the StarCraft squad specifically like influenced this, but it
definitely did because we saw so much positive cultural sentiment towards Shopify, and that helped us make the case for, we can really grow this.
That definitely makes a ton of sense. So you've been involved in the esports industry for like well over a decade now. How's the industry changed? What's different now?
Some things have gotten better. Some things gotten worse, for sure. It's nice that there's definitely a larger scale of companies and legitimate companies that are involved, and there's obviously more financial backing than, well, maybe not ever, because there's been a little bit of maybe pullback. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I do miss sometimes the scrappy days of us pulling off events, with so few resources, and everybody that was involved, that was there, you knew was there just because of the passion. Nobody was really there because of the money, because it's a very bad financial choice, especially back then. It's still a bad financial choice for most people now. But as esports grew, I feel like a lot of people attached themselves to it that thought they can just turn this into a career. This is going to be the next big thing that is going to make a lot of money. And I think a lot of those people that weren't endemic, especially on the business side, ended up doing a lot of harm. Being very inefficient with money, making promises that could not be fulfilled. So that was a shame. And but one nice thing is how much more diverse and inclusive esports is nowadays. I mean, when I started playing StarCraft, I mean, obviously lots of Koreans, but primarily a lot of white dudes in most of esports. Fighting games, I think we're always a little bit better at that, but it's nice to see now way more women involved, like way more diverse demographics just in esports. It's truly much better, because I thought the beautiful thing of gaming is always that it's technically very accessible. Not to everybody, but to more people than maybe regular sports would be. So I was always hoping for me that esports could become this like really unifying things where like young people all across different countries and cultures can come together. And that is really nice, because I think that has been accomplished in some way. Always still a work in progress. But I think what's happening now with like a little bit of the pullback of like the VCs and a lot of teams, I think that we're going to see disappearing is maybe a good thing, because I think we were going through a little bit of a purge where the people that, like a lot of bad actors, I think are going to get removed in the next couple of years. But the painful thing about that is that the people are going to suffer, like the lower level employees that are losing their jobs and stuff.
Of course.
That really sucks, and I feel like the situation was created, as I said, by some of those people that overpromised like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's also just this global economic turndown.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to see where that goes over the next few years. But yeah, it seems like a tough time to be in the business.
Yeah,
in a sense. So, why do you think StarCraft II saw? I mean, maybe a little bit aggressive to say it that way, but like a fall from grace relative to some of the other contemporaries that, like CSGO and League of Legends, that sort of continued with very linear progression in terms of growth, and StarCraft really didn't, in a sense, or obviously also declined for a long time.
I think it's a multitude of factors. First of all, StarCraft II had really bad timing, that it was more or less right on the cusp of when free-to-play became a big thing. StarCraft was like one of the last big esports that was an out-of-the-box game, and then free-to-play eventually became a thing, but way too late, and the functionality of it was hard to make work. Like a lot of credit to the people that implemented what they implemented with like co-op and skins, but if the game isn't built from the ground up to basically work like that, it's always going to be difficult to make it happen, and it kind of happened as the decline already happened. On top of that, we had, I think, way too long periods of where we had pretty boring meta, where you had the Broodlord Infestor, and then you have the Swarmhost, and there was very harmful periods of time where people were kind of got turned off the game. Obviously, you had didn't have the same backing from Korea, so that clamor kind of over time fell off because it didn't have the big Korean broadcasters and the big Korean audiences, and then eventually people started chasing the other games that just seem to be in a healthier state when it comes to the future. I think a part of that was a little bit of a doom and gloom culture as well that contributed a little bit, but yeah.
Absolutely. I think the doom and gloom culture did a lot of harm. Yeah. Like, I forgot who said this. I think maybe it was Day 9, and I always stuck with this mentality of like, like if you have two different cars, like a high spec Mercedes, that's still a fast car. Just because it's not as fast as a Ferrari, doesn't mean that it's a bum car. It's still doing well, and and that brings us to like where we're at right now. And so with the announcement of some big teams entering the StarCraft space, and really successful crowdfunding campaigns for these new RTS titles. It seems like, we're entering into a period that might be like the second RTS Renaissance.
Right.
What do you think accounts for the renewed interest in the genre?
Well, one thing is that I think it's just about time. I'm always struck with how many people are actually deeply passionate about RTS, but it kind of fell into the background. But now we have this generation of people that are a little bit older, that are like professionals, that are quite successful, that have the ability to, for instance, crowdfund something like Stormgate, I think on a level that is above what the average Kickstarter would be, because you have all these very smart, successful people that are RTS fans, being able to give back now in some way, and they want to see the next generation. So I think timing is good. Stormgate just existing, I think, is getting people really, really excited. The team's entering StarCraft II now. To me, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because obviously a lot of this is coming because of like the Gamers 8 stuff, and there are opinions. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? It is maybe a little bit artificially pushed by that.
Of course.
And doesn't only come with upsides, but still happy that RTS is trending towards something where people can see a future.
Absolutely. I'm also really curious about like the length of some of these commitments, and what we'll see over the next few years, whether this will be a short stint for some of these organizations, or whether they'll be here to stay.
Yeah.
So, what do you think some of these like next generation RTS developers can do to capture some players that are really fans of other genres right now?
So I'm going to start off with the first thing they need to make sure not to do is to, I've seen that happen in the past, where people try to completely reinvent RTS, and to the point where they only cater to a theoretical casual vision of RTS. And I've seen all those games fail because they didn't actually have that interesting essence of what makes an RTS great. So at its core, it needs to be this like hardcore, like difficult game that people will never be able to fully master. But and then you need to have some sort of like on-ramp to still cater to the casuals. Like campaign is great, co-op is great, and I'm excited to see what like Stormgate might be able to do to have maybe a pipeline from like co-op to like 3v3 to like one-on-one. But what made RTS so great, like Warcraft and Brood War, was there was so many custom games. People could kind of find their own way of playing an RTS, and that spawned some of the most successful games of all time with Dota and League of Legends. So I think that's important, having this community aspect where like the scary one-on-one is there, but you don't need to necessarily do that. But I think once people are part of that ecosystem, they're still interested in it and they have a lot of respect for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm on the same page, and a lot of other people are as well. I think focus on the social element, being able to like, it's very, very difficult to get a friend into StarCraft if they're not already into the genre.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like the onboarding seems to be like the key thing.
Yeah.
But then like that also a way to matriculate people from some of those more casual formats to other elements of the game.
Yeah.
So you just competed in the Stormgate show match. Obviously, there's a ton of buzz around the game right now. What are you liking the most about the game? What are you excited about?
So I think what I'm excited about is that it brings a lot of fresh ideas, or like combined ideas. It doesn't feel like playing StarCraft. It feels like something completely unique and new. It doesn't feel like playing Warcraft. I like that they're experimenting with like things like creep camps and map control, and the game feels good and it feels fun now. I mean, that's what I'm most excited about, because I played very, very early versions of Stormgate. Like I think the first person outside of Frost Giant that played the game. And at that stage, I mean, I'm not. I don't think they'd blame me for admitting it wasn't fun at that point because it was just still so stripped down.
Yeah.
But now we're at a stage where I'm playing the game and I'm enjoying it, and I'm having more fun with Stormgate right now than with any other RTS I've ever played in my life, other than basically the Blizzard RTS. So we're already at that level now, and we don't have a third faction yet. There's a ton of stuff missing from the tech tree. There's a lot of polish missing. I mean, balance is a whole different thing. So the fact that the fun is there now gets me excited.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm so glad to hear that, because it's scary, right? I think we're putting a lot of hopes into this game and what it can do for the genre. So, like, obviously the most key thing is it a fun game? Are people enjoying it? And I'm really glad to hear that you've got such positive opinions. And yeah. So I mean, that's about what I had prepared for you. Do you have any closing words?
Not really. Just like appreciate what you're doing for the scene as well, because like we definitely need content creators that like do stuff like this. It's tricky because I know it's not the content that gets the most clicks and views, but I'm always happy when people can like actually share the insights of the RTS scene. So thank you for everybody supporting the channel and watching.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and it was really sad to me that there wasn't a lot of metatextual content about the community, because I feel like that does make the community feel a little thin.
Yeah.
And so I'm really happy to help flesh out some of that.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you for the time.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Get subscribed so you don't miss out on future releases like this one. If you really enjoy what I'm doing here, consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the video description. That's all for now, my friends. Until next time.